Good afternoon and Happy New Year. Welcome to the GMC January membership meeting. It's so good to see everybody here. What a great turnout, and it's important, so I'm glad you're all here. I hope everyone had a great holiday season and that 2023 is off to a good start. We lead off today's meeting with an overview of the Milwaukee Police Department staffing study that was in part commissioned by the GMC. Richard and Ian Brady, which Brady is not coming, Heather? Heather told me Richard is not coming, but Ian Brady's here, so I apologize, but Ian Brady's here of Matrix Consulting Group, and Ian will share insight from the report, and then Milwaukee Police Department Chief Jeffrey Norman, who is here, is going to respond to the findings. This is Chief Norman's first visit to the GMC, and we think it's vitally important to use this time to reflect on how we can support the goals of the police department and be a resource to each other. But first, we're pleased to welcome fellow GM. Actually, before I would recognize our mayor sitting right here. So I can go off script for a minute. Chevy, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. We appreciate you coming here and supporting the organization. Let me start. But first, we're pleased to welcome fellow GMC member George Stanley, recently retired Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel editor, to the podium. George has spent more than 43 years in journalism, a majority of that in Wisconsin, carrying out the important goal of journalism, playing a key role in society. George has been described as having a deep love for Wisconsin and building community, and as a phenomenal journalist, writer, and leader, to which we can all attest. George carefully navigated the acquisition of the Journal-Sentinel in 2016, transitioning the paper to a national conglomerate, immediately affecting the local dynamic of staffing and reporting. George fought to keep jobs local and reporting an integral part of our community's success. While we will miss George's leadership daily, we are thankful for the groundwork he's created in ensuring the existence of an independent, free press locally and statewide. Please welcome George Stanley.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you all for the gracious invitation to speak today. I wrote a final column as editor of the Journal-Sentinel that appeared in yesterday's newspaper. There's a digital version, and here's a print version. It outlines some of the challenges that independent, evidence-based news outlets like ours are facing today, and what it means for our community and our democracy. For example, local newspapers historically have provided almost every bit of the reporting about democracy in action: the hearings, the board meetings, policy debates, trials, records, and elections, according to a research report by PEN America. And where there is not a strong local newsroom doing these jobs, citizens are less likely to vote, fewer people run for office, and more candidates run unopposed. Government officials conduct themselves with less integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness. Salaries, taxation, deficit spending, and corruption rise, and business malfeasance goes unchecked and unregulated. In addition, quote, the loss of local journalism has been accompanied by the malignant spread of misinformation and disinformation, political polarization, eroding trust in media, and a yawning digital and economic divide among citizens, according to the Northwestern Medill School of Journalism's Local News Initiative. Since 2005, the country has lost more than a fourth of its newspapers and is on track to lose a third by 2025. I mentioned in the column some examples of how we fix problems in our democracy. An independent press highlights problems and potential solutions so that informed citizens can demand better of their elected representatives and institutions. I included in the story our recent reporting on fatal fires caused by dangerous wiring behind the walls of rental homes, and how landlords in the legislature took away local control over building inspections, and how we found cases where local officials were doing virtually nothing to enforce the electrical code violations that they do still have in our oldest and our poorest neighborhoods. Another problem that we highlighted with our reporting that I did not mention in this week's column, but which people in the Greater Milwaukee Committee helped greatly improve, was Meg Kissinger's outstanding investigations into our poor record of treating people with severe mental illness in Milwaukee County. Public response to Meg's reporting led to 5 new apartment buildings for people with severe illnesses, with nurses on site to make sure that their medications are working properly, and when they're not, to get them help long before police need to be called. It also led to bipartisan legislative action that improved mental health care statewide and removed authority over the mental health complex from the county board and put it in the hands of health professionals. As those reforms took effect, a reader sent us this note. I had to get in touch with you regarding my sister's recent visit at Milwaukee County Mental Health Complex. She's been chronically mentally ill for decades now and has been to county more than 24 times on police holds, etc. On our last visit there, at my insistence, I was met with a stern, "No, I am not going there, they're awful," from my sister. But she eventually agreed. I was stunned, frankly. She stabilized after agreeing to take her meds. The staff was very responsive to her and our family. But what was most stunning was the aftercare. They fixed her up in an assisted living situation. They called us on nights and weekends during her initial stay at county. They followed her several weeks now past hospitalization. It's just incredible. My sister is responding to this. Frankly, our family owes this to you and the Journal. Things seem to have genuinely changed. But it really isn't the Journal. The reporter, Meg Kissinger, who had a passion for this because of her own family, highlighted it, but nothing would have happened if the public wouldn't have responded. That's what creates the action, the public response. And this is the type of thing that makes our job rewarding. It's not all the money they pay us as journalists. A couple of other things that I didn't mention in the column that I will say here today. The stock market is a great place to be if you've got a new product that serves a public need in a new way and you want financing to leverage it up. It's a fine place to be if you have a steady stream of income that can pay a healthy dividend to folks looking for a safe return on their investment, as we were for pretty much the entire 20th century. It's a terrible place to be if you're an industry in transition. Day traders and hedge funds do not care about how our work helps the community solve problems or help citizens stay in charge of their government. A number of legacy Metro newspapers have found a route to the future business model based on growing digital circulation and retaining print circulation. And we've been working really hard at the Journal-Sentinel to lead the rest of Gannett there as well. These include the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, the Boston Globe, the Seattle Times, and the Philadelphia Inquirer. The biggest difference between them and us is they are locally and privately owned. They don't have to panic when the next quarter's numbers begin to falter. I do wish we were privately held by local owners, as we were for most of our history. But there are other ways to support local truth-seeking reporting that brings problems and potential solutions to light. We have worked with many partners in the GMC, including the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, I see Ellen here, including Marquette in both its journalism school and its law school and its Lubar Center for Public Policy Research. UW-Milwaukee, and I see Mark here today, and its School of Freshwater Sciences. St. A's and WellPoint Care. And there are many other potential partnerships for public service journalism that we haven't developed yet. And then there's ways that any individual can support us. We work with Report for America. They've supported 3 journalists in the Journal-Sentinel and 3 additional journalists across Wisconsin for us, and you can donate directly to our reporters there at jsonline.com/RFA. And you can get digital subscriptions if you're not a subscriber, and provide gift subscriptions to others through jsonline.com/gift. So I'd like to end there and then just see if there's any questions. Thank you very much.
I want to echo Greg's comments and thank George both for being here, but also for being a partner of the GMC and someone in and of this community for such a long time. Oftentimes in journalism, I know you weren't born here. You were born, I think, in Texas, right? Texas can claim you as their native son, maybe for a very small period of time. But you've been in Wisconsin and been a Wisconsinite and of here for all of your career and watched as things have changed in the industry that you chose as your profession. And so to have just a little bit of your insight, but also your continued work in the community will be very important. If you read George's piece, he talked about that journalism schools grew up about the turn of the century and the 20th century because people coming out of a lot of tumult thought that democracy was at risk or there were big challenges. Well, here we are 130 some years later where a lot of people think that those are some of the same issues, and journalism has changed significantly. I would tell you that in the middle of that period between the start of the 20th century and where we are today in about 1950, I wasn't born in 1950, I was born after that, but my parents met each other at journalism school at Marquette University, and they committed their careers in some way to that, and there are so many of us in this community who have roots in where our community has been in journalism, and it has changed so much. So we're appreciative of the work that you have done, George, but also appreciative that you're going to maintain your work in this community. You're going to continue to be here, continue to contribute. So once again, we appreciate it. Let's give George one more round of applause. I'm going to give just a little bit of update on some other things that are going on at the GMC. I saw Michelle Nettles here. I don't know if Corey is here, but Michelle is married to a master. I hope you all know that because Scale Up Milwaukee this week is hosting its initial Meet the Masters of the Year. It's Wednesday morning at the Global Water Center. And Corey will be featured in its initial Meet the Master this year. The program's goal is to share strategies and tactics that successful people, successful masters like Corey, have used to grow their business and contribute to the community. We invite all GMC members, Scale-Up members, attendees, but GMC members are also welcome to attend this hour-long interview with Corey, and the QR code on the screen here it will get you more information. There are already a couple of members that are signed up for this. It's a great way to engage. It's a great way to engage with some of our scale-up people as well. So we encourage you to take part in that if you can. Just a couple of other updates that I want to give before turning it over to Maggie to talk a little bit more about the Forward 48 initiative. First of all, on the city's operational review, the mayor is at the table here, and for those of you who were at one of our last meetings where the mayor and I had a conversation, we talked about this initiative that we're going to be launching with the city and will take kind of the next 3 or 4 or 5 months. And what this will be is an operational review. We have hired, or I'm about to sign a contract with a third-party consultant that does this work nationally. This will be kind of the top-to-bottom review of city services and city departments to find efficiencies, to find ways to deliver services better, and to hopefully save some additional money. If you have been here over the course of the last year, and I'm just about to come to 1 year on the job here, I have said time and again that moving from a job that I was in Madison, working with all manner of government, all kinds of local government, but coming here to the city and coming back to working more closely with local government, I've had a front row seat to just how challenging the fiscal times are now in our community and just how challenging they're about to get. We've talked a lot about this, that the ARPA resources that the city has at their disposal that run out at the end of 2023 or 2024, those are really the last of the things that are that we have at our disposal, and the mayor and his administration have at their disposal before very significant cuts are going to be made in very important services like public safety we're going to be talking about today. And so it's fundamentally a revenue challenge. Again, the state legislature controls a lot of the purse strings, and they are the ones who are in charge of a lot of the resources that get allocated not only to Milwaukee and the city and Milwaukee County, but 1,800 units of government around the state. The state's in an enviable position now with almost a $7 billion surplus to fix some of these challenges and fix some of the things that have gone untended over the last 20 or 25 years. But It's always a good thing for the city of Milwaukee to, as good stewards of resources, to look and find ways that they can be more effective, more efficient. The city is doing many of those things. What we'll do in partnership with this third party and in partnership with the city is we will make sure that the city is doing all of those things well. They'll compare themselves to what people are doing elsewhere around the country, and I'm sure we'll find additional things that the city can do to be more effective. So that will launch in the next few weeks. We'll be announcing this week that we're partnering with a consultant. We'll be announcing some people from the local community who will be part of this effort. We have raised about 80% of the resources, and we're on our way towards fully funding this effort. It's going to cost several $100,000, and for those of you in the room who have already contributed, I truly appreciate that, and I know the mayor does as well, because this is really important. It's a demonstration of this city trying to do everything possible to operate in the most effective manner. But I also want everyone to know, and this is where all of you play a role too, this is also in order to make sure that the legislature knows that the city is doing everything that it is called, that the legislature has called on the city to do, to operate as effectively as possible, to look at ways that we can put resources together with Milwaukee County, or we can restructure things. So this will be part of that endeavor, and the state will be engaged in its budget process over the next 4 or 5 months, and all of you will be part of those conversations with your local legislature. We'll find organized ways to do that. There's been a lot of discussion around a 1% sales tax for Milwaukee County, and there's been effective dialogue around that, and there may be some movement on that. On behalf of the mayor, I want to make sure that everybody knows that's not going to be solely good enough for the city. If we put all our eggs into the basket of a 1% sales tax and we get that, that'll take the city a portion of the way that they need to go. I watched the Sunday morning news show yesterday. The governor was on there, and he said that the most important issue to deal with now is shared revenue, which is a large funding source for all local communities around the state. And if the state can do something effective in shared revenue and also deal with things on the sales tax, the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County will have a very different fiscal future than what they're looking at right now. So all of you will have an opportunity to be engaged in that discussion over the next few months. We appreciate the people who have been involved in it to date, but look forward to more communication about that, because the state, for all intents and purposes, will be done with their biennial budget by about July 1st. So over the course of the next 4 or 5 months, there'll be lots of opportunity to weigh in and lots of opportunity for us to be part of those discussions on that issue and other issues of high priority in the community. Speaking of other high priorities, there are a number of people within the GMC who have been part of our strategic planning efforts over the last few months. We'll have Janine Edwards and Steve Zimmerman here in February to talk about where we are in that process. We hope to have that finished here in the first quarter. I think we've done a lot of work. I want to express our appreciation for the 130 or so members who contributed their thoughts and responded to our survey, and that really is doing a lot to inform the work that we're going to be doing moving forward. So very much appreciate that, and again, we will have more dialogue and back and forth on that in February and moving forward, but there's been a lot of work done on that already. Again, we hope and expect to have that finished by April. The other April thing that I want to make sure that I re-bring to your attention is that we now have a date of Friday, April 21st, that's been set out for the 75th anniversary celebration for the Greater Milwaukee Committee. The Greater Milwaukee Committee was established in 1948, so we're celebrating the 75th anniversary. We're turning the page, and we're going to be looking forward to a new set of objectives and a new set of intentions that we're going to have moving forward. This will be an opportunity for us to look backward and celebrate everything that's happened over the course of that 75 years, but more importantly, an opportunity for us to springboard towards what we're going to be and where we're going to go in the next 10 or 15 years in this community. And there are so many great things that are going on here, but also I think we feel a shared responsibility for what we all have to do to ensure that the community is who and what we want it to be in that next generation. So you'll see more information. We'll get information on that out to people in just the next several days, and appreciate the people who have volunteered to help us put that together. So with that, I'm going to, I have an opportunity to introduce my colleague, Maggie Dowse. who is our Director of Innovation and Talent at the Greater Milwaukee Committee. She's going to share an update on Forward 48. We also have some Forward 48ers who are in amongst us today, and this is an important, no matter where you go right now, you are hearing things about talent attraction, talent development, talent retention, and Forward 48 is a program that was born of the GMC and our partners at the Hone Group and has been successful in its several cohorts already. This past year, we expanded it to be not only Milwaukee and Madison, but Milwaukee, Madison, and Green Bay, and more of a statewide focus. So there's great opportunity with us and great opportunity for all of you to be participants in that moving forward. So with that, I'm going to let Maggie talk to us a little bit about Forward 48.
Hi everyone. Can I have my 48ers, my alum who are in the room? We have a handful. You just raise your hand and a couple. Make sure you say hello to them and introduce faculty too. I know we have many faculty in the room as well. There's more than just, where did I see? Okay, alum, all right. So you can see we've got some representatives in the room. As Joel mentioned, Forward 48 really has become one of GMC's core programs. It's a collaboration between ourselves, the Home Group, and now New North. It builds a robust and diverse civic leadership success and strategy through experiential learning, professional development, and exclusive networking opportunities. 2022 brought a lot of successes for the program. We had another 2 cohorts go through, learning excuse me, from 13 of our region's notable civic and business leaders. In the fall, we launched the statewide effort, as Joel mentioned, to engage rising leaders from both Madison and the New North. This cohort, our largest yet, now that we're back and able to have events in person, was able to attend some of their programming at the Pfizer Forum as well as Lambeau Field. We also launched Select 6, which helped to feature local nonprofit boards who were looking for top-tier talent to serve on their boards. So now we have many of our Forward 48 alum who are helping to serve and support those organizations. As of today, the alumni group now has 279 members, and many are continuing to stay connected with one another through networking, continued learning, and really just working to find ways to make an impact on the community. This spring, we're excited to have another amazing group of faculty to work with us, and we'll have more to announce in the coming weeks. Again, thank you to these leaders for sharing their time and talents. It's their stories of how they've gotten things done, how you all have gotten things done, that serve as inspiration and just learning for the rising leaders in our communities. So to wrap things up, and in the spirit of the new year and setting intentions, our own Forward 48 team has really identified that this growing alumni network really needs to be a key area of focus for our work. And we want to invite you as members to also consider this important question. So how might the GMC activate and engage the Forward 48 alumni network? I can also phrase this, how might you all support them in their pursuit of community impact? For a quick example, we have some of our alumni who identified gun violence as a really critical issue that this community and many others are facing. They have come together to learn, and now are going to be hosting a fundraising event next month. And so they're really looking to be able to support their local organizations, and we'll be sure to send information about that. We're ready to elevate these leaders and look forward to working with you all to help pave the path for their leadership. Our applications for the spring are going to be opening this week, and we're always accepting nominations. So I look forward to seeing some of your rising leaders in the program. Thank you so much.
Now, because of time constraints, we were actually going to have you kind of discuss some of that on your own. We want to get to the topic here, but at a future meeting, we may well have more of that. But I can just tell you, having been here now almost a year and having to see 2 cohorts of Forward 48, and as this continues to move, this is truly important, and it's something that can have statewide impact, and we can continue to grow and keep our own leaders here in southeastern Wisconsin, but have impact around the state. So welcome your continued involvement in there, your investment. I think the waiting list for the current group is numbers more than 100, right? But we're trying every year now to make sure that we're doing this, and importantly, as Maggie said, to also cultivate the hundreds of people now who are graduates of this program, and how can we continue to keep them involved and make sure that they're a part of the pipeline of talent in our region and in our state. And so as we continue and where we're going with our strategy at the GMC, this is something I think that it's a community-wide strategy we have to continue to focus on, is how are we developing a diverse group of young leaders in the community that we all want it to be. So look for that in the future as well. Now, I'm going to introduce a couple of people, and then I think my time on the stage here is going to be gone, and we're going to talk about public safety for the rest of the time that we have together here. I think some people are familiar with the fact that about 15 years ago, the GMC partnered with the city of Milwaukee on what was then a matrix study with the Milwaukee Police Department about force levels and how do we compare in other places. There were some very real things that happened as a result of that, the civilianization of the parking checkers. Previously, there were people in squads writing parking tickets and things like that that came out of it that saved the city money and really was able to align resources in the right way. Well, as time goes on, the opportunity and the necessity to do these things presents itself again. So in the course of 2022, we partnered once again with the city and did this, and you're going to see some of the first findings of that today and hear from the chief and our consultants about that. This report has been shared with members of the Common Council, including Common Council President Perez, and MPD is committed to transparency around these recommendations with all of the partners who are involved. First, we're going to hear from Ian Brady of the Matrix Consulting Group. He's going to share an overview of the report and the key findings that are highlighting in that. Then we're going to welcome, as Greg talked about, our Chief of Police, Jeff Norman, to share a response and insight into what the report means for MPD and our community. Just a little bit about Chief Norman, so since Ian will introduce him and not me. He was sworn in as the Chief on November 15th, 2021, after serving as Assistant and Acting Chief since 2020. He has an extensive history with MPD in our community, appointed as an officer in 1996. Went from officer to detective, lieutenant, captain. His career has spanned a variety of districts and divisions, including robbery, violent crime, homicide, and property crimes. He's a native of Milwaukee, deeply understands the core issues our community is experiencing, and I have appreciated the opportunity to work with him over the course of the last year in my position as well. We look forward to a continued partnership on behalf of the community and the GMC. But before we get to the chief, I'm going to welcome to the podium Ian Brady, who's Vice President of the Matrix Consulting Group. Ian?
So I want to thank GMC Chief Norman for inviting me here to speak today about the study and what we've come up with. A little bit about what we were asked to do as part of this study. Our study began with developing a basic understanding of the department by conducting interviews at the department, through collecting data, through conducting a comparative survey in which we benchmarked MPD against other similarly sized jurisdictions. And from that analysis of data and everything that we had learned from that point, we were really tasked to look at 4 key areas, and that's what are the staffing needs of the department, both overall and within every unit and assignment. Looking at what's the best use of existing resources through looking at opportunities to optimize deployment, through civilianization, different ways of staffing functions where sworn resources may not be necessarily required, and also looking at different ways of providing services in terms of alternative service delivery, alternative response. So in the area of patrol, which is the largest part of the department, really the backbone of any police agency, looking at quantitative analysis of computer-aided dispatch data is really central to what we do, where we're building up a picture of patrol workload and comparing that against capacity. Our central measure in that, our KPI that we use in examining whether or not staffing is adequate, is proactive time. And that's the time that they are not responding to calls for service. Ideally, you want them to be able to be proactive, to be able to engage with the community, and also just to be able to have units available so that response times aren't too high. We generally target that at an overall level, about 35 to 40% of patrol officers' time should be available to be used proactively. What we found, and you can see this in the chart on the right, is that proactive time on an overall basis is at just 26%, so significantly short of that 35 to 40% level, which indicates just on its own that staffing resources are inadequate. And while it's 26% at an overall level, you can see that many times of the day, days of the week, it gets a lot lower than that. Towards the nighttime hours, it gets as low as -4% on certain days. So when you have values that are as low as that, what that really translates to is there's not enough units available to respond to calls. Non-emergency call response times start to increase, become really extended, and overall the level of service diminishes as a result. So in isolation, just to be able to address patrol on its own, you need 106 additional officers to reach 35% proactive time. There are different strategies that can mitigate that and accomplish that, which I'll talk about in a second. But while proactive time at an overall level is 26%, there's pretty stark differences by area of the city. In the southern districts, proactive time can be as high as 48%, 56%, but in the northern districts 4, 5, and 7, it's as low as 10, 12, 13%. And that translates to the same issue where response times become extended. The level of service is ultimately vastly different than would be experienced in the southern area of the city. And so these are some of the more extreme differences that we've seen in any large departments that we've worked with. And it does translate to a noticeable effect in terms of extended response times geographically, where you're more likely to have extended response times in the north. So whereas the overall resource issue is still there, to be able to address the issues of inequality can be done with existing resources through redeployment, through multiple approaches, including reallocating the number of officers assigned to each district based off of having it be proportional to patrol workload specifically, and to repeat that process on a regular basis. But also as a stopgap measure to redeploy certain like specialized details such as captain's cars to patrol to mitigate these issues. Additionally, we looked at alternative response, and we see alternative response as really an array of different approaches where in the absence of any alternative response strategies, any type of call, whether it's non-emergency involving homelessness, mental health crisis, it all kind of gets funneled to a sworn officer showing up and responding on scene. Alternative response is about refocusing that and diverting some of those non-emergency calls to online reporting, phone reporting, having civilians go out and take certain types of calls, having specialized units take like mental health crisis response calls, for instance. So it's about refocusing what we ask of police officers versus other dedicated units. Many agencies around the country, in particular, have civilians go out and take certain types of calls where they're not emergencies, there's no suspects, no leads. It's more just about getting a report, like say a bike theft. And we looked at creating that program in Milwaukee and what that would translate to as far as what kind of an effect it would have on patrol services. So to be able to adopt a similar program in terms of the types of calls that other agencies respond to would divert up to 9% of all calls that MPD currently handles. So a pretty substantial portion of calls that would go a long way to mitigating those issues with resource needs. That alone would increase proactive time from 26% to 31%, requiring 19 new civilian positions. So other strategies for alternative response, the department recently implemented an online reporting system. This is a really great approach, and we think that it can be expanded in the future to a wider range of calls similar to many other jurisdictions. We also looked at different approaches to expanding the mental health crisis response program to triage calls in the field. In investigations, we found that there are a number of units that do have resource needs. The magnitude of those resource needs are significantly less than patrol, so just a couple in each unit, but nonetheless, there were several areas where workload exceeded capacity. But one of the critical findings we have is that MPD doesn't have a centralized case management system, And that is a critical need in that it allows for a standardized approach for supervisors to manage cases. So purchasing, implementing one is a top priority. In looking at other areas like administration's support functions, civilianization was really a top focus where we're evaluating, do sworn officers need to perform those duties? Could civilians handle it? And ultimately, the goal here isn't necessarily about cutting police officer positions. It's about freeing up sworn resources so that they can tackle the kinds of functions like patrol investigations where there are critical needs. So with what I'm about to say with civilianization and some footnotes, it's a long-term project. There's a lot of steps that need to be done. These are classifications that need to be created, people recruited, policies developed, but also the union needs to be brought in. This isn't something that can be done overnight, but nonetheless, it's something that, over time, over the next 5-10 years, can have a pretty substantial impact. As you can see on the right, Milwaukee has a much lower percentage of staff that are civilians compared with many other jurisdictions around the country that are of relatively similar size. So a couple of areas where we found there are opportunities to civilianize: property and evidence. Milwaukee is one of the only agencies that we've worked with that staffs this with predominantly sworn employees. Technical communications, so dispatch, this is something that's already in progress. Quartermaster forensics. Many, certainly not all, but many agencies have this as an entirely civilian operation, and that includes like crime scene technicians, district crime analysts, planning and logistics, a number of other areas where over time these can be civilianized. So our overall conclusions that can largely fall into two categories. There's a number of severe issues that many of which can be addressed now with existing resources. Like I mentioned, the issue where patrol service levels are different in the north versus the south. But overarching beyond that, significant staffing issues that only can be addressed over the long term with different strategies, and that includes civilianizing positions through alternative response, through adding sworn resources, many of which are difficult given funding constraints, but nonetheless, there are many problems that simply do require additional funding to solve. So in terms of the question of additional resources, looking at each recommendation in isolation can have challenges, like with patrol, where you could fix it just by adding 105 officers, but you could cut that number down significantly by civilianizing positions and then freeing those officers up to be reassigned there. So in terms of the total number of staff that we're recommending, there isn't quite one answer, but if no civilianization would occur, MPD would need 133 sworn, 27 additional civilian positions beyond current budgeted levels. But if all of the civilianization recommendations were implemented, and granted, many of these take significant time to implement, it would only be 11 sworn and 116 civilian positions. So either way, that's a lot of additional funding, but there are different levels depending on where MPD ultimately falls on the spectrum of which areas are civilianized and which are not. So those are the findings that we've come up with, and with that, I'd like to invite Chief Norman for his presentation.
Thank you, Ian. Before I start, I'd just like to wish everyone a happy and blessed new year. I'd also like to take the time to thank the Greater Milwaukee Committee, Joe Brennan specifically, in regards to inviting me to be here to talk with you all today and discuss in regards to our partnership in working to reorganize and be a better department. I'd like to take time also to recognize Mayor Johnson in regards to being a great partner and also a supporter of the Milwaukee Police Department's efforts in keeping our city safe. Over 2 years ago, the Milwaukee Police Department was committed to ourselves to an overall organizational study to look at our efficiencies, opportunities, and to right-size our department. MPD is grateful for the work of the Matrix team and grateful for the support of the GMC for getting this study completed. MPD strives to be as efficient as possible with our budget in our operations. And the Matrix report is a helpful tool to identify additional efficiencies that we can make with our department. My team has already begun to work on going through the recommendations, especially when we talk about civilianizing, understanding that we need to expand our online and robust community service officers' response. And we understand that we need to identify those both short and long-term priorities, which is important to be a better and more effective department. And throughout the process, MPD is committed to being transparent with our partners. While the Matrix report is a guide, I can assure you I continually seek ways to be an efficient organization and even beyond these recommendations to put forth more efforts. As you review the report recommendations, I encourage you all to be part of our solution. You will see that we have technological needs to be more efficient and needs for monetary resources to move us forward. Thus, we do need the help from Madison. GMC members have a sphere of influence beyond what MPD can reach on our own. To assist in our public safety efforts, GMC members can work with those spheres to help advocate for MPD obtaining resources and technology. We also encourage your feedback on how we can be an efficient organization that serve the needs of Milwaukee. And while MPD is committed to efficiency, we recognize that our top priority is public safety and keeping our community safe. I'm pleased to report that at the end of 2022, our numbers indicate that Part 1 crimes have decreased in our city by 15%. Additionally, overall violence decreased by 7%. While homicides have remained a challenge, we are over 11%, I own that. It is worthy to note that we started 2022 almost over 200% in regards to homicides. That as we have gradually put forth better strategies, by the time about middle of the 2022, we start seeing the decrease in regards to our homicides. It's also worthy to note burglaries have decreased by 18%, auto thefts have decreased by 23%, and robberies decreased by 14%. These are positive trends that we will continue to work as hard as we can to keep these numbers on a downward trajectory. GMC members can help with public safety efforts. Educate your spheres on influence of situational awareness. Keep your cars locked, your firearms secured, because as we see, we have a unfortunate crisis of unsecured firearms being stolen out of vehicles and used for violent purposes. As was noted earlier, we heard about a firearm issue, a public safety issue in regards to the reckless and the use of firearms in many, many different incidents. Business can work with MPD on best lighting and surveillance cameras for their locations and parking areas to assist with public safety. Crime prevention through environmental design works to deter crime. Our teams can help you with that. Additionally, MPD is proud to have the support of the Milwaukee Police Foundation. This is a foundation that is made up of passionate supporters from our business community who have made it their mission to use private sector support to assist our department with needed resources for our members. Examples of that support were de-escalation training for all our department and providing bullet-resistant glass to all 7 police districts. In the end, the Milwaukee Police Department has various platforms to assist in the work of public safety. Whereas personally joining the voices of support for the Milwaukee sales tax or the increased share revenue, as Joe had alluded to, supporting our police foundation, or engaging in public safety efforts, whatever you choose as your personal platform, please do something. Thank you all for making this community strong, and as I always say, together we are better. Thank you. I didn't know how to play the role was here, but that is fine. Let's go. Yes, sir.
What's the rough savings of civilianizing a role? What's the cost impact of civilianizing a role? And where are you in terms of the range of positions that the consultant recommended? Where do you think the right number is?
So the challenge in regards to understand the actual savings is something we work with budget. I know that as was alluded to, we are in the process of civilianizing. We, in fact, have been over a couple of years civilianizing several different areas within the city and within our department. One is the forensic division. The challenge is that we are responsive to the collective bargaining agreement. This is not an easy process. Understand that as we change out these particular roles, there needs to be job descriptions from our Department of Employee Relations created, and also that you got dealing with sometimes it can be a litigious situation in regards to what do you do with those who are there now. So we are working pretty adamant and robustly through the process. I've always been very public about my embracing this. I tell everyone, beyond just being the executive leader over the Milwaukee Police Department, I'm a resident too. I pay taxes here. I understand what it means to be efficient, what it means to be a good steward or taxpayer dollars. But this is a long-term strategy, a consistent strategy. I mean, we just recently had placed a civilian manager over our forensic division, which was normally a captain's position, savings of several, thousands of dollars in that. So there is a lot of opportunity, but it's not something that is a snap of the finger, twinkle of the nose. The actual full numbers of it, that's something that the team will have to come back, but there is significant savings as we are transitioning. But you also need to remember that's not saying that you're taking that position out altogether. All you're doing is having a less costing position for that particular role. So there are some challenges, but I am very proud of the team, how we embrace this, working with the mayor's office, working with the Department of Employee Relations. Understand that there is a long-term strategy and making sure that we're pushing ourselves in a better position, but also, and I'm a very big proponent, having sworn officers do sworn things. When it comes to investigations, when it comes to responding to violence, you need a sworn officer. And that's not something that we can ever take away from our responsibilities. But there are opportunities, and I think that we're being pretty robust in regards to embracing that and working through the planning aspects of that. Yes, sir.
Chief, is there a difference between police time on the south side and the north side? You had the study that talked about proactive time. Are the rates of crime different?
So the challenge about that is that, first of all, the entire city is important. You never want to take away from Peter to pay Paul. Understand that the needs and some of the violence that we've seen has been hot spots all across our city. But with that said, it is important to reevaluate where the resources are at. Very thankful for the matrix of allowing us to have an eye-opening in regards to there may be some opportunities. We just recently got this matrix report back last year, 2020, latter part of it, so we're still working through what does that look like, because as we all know, you don't want to create pockets or vacant areas where there is not that particular police presence and proactivity. So we do recognize there's opportunities, and we're working through it with the team. This is the start of the new year, so it's kind of difficult to say, what is that going to finally look like. But I will say that there is, some reorganization that we can do, and looking at what are the actual immediate needs. But there is only so much moving around the pieces that you can do. Re-examining what is our responsibilities within our respective districts. I have already directed the assistant chiefs, the executive officers over these bureaus to ensure that we are utilizing our resources in the most effective, efficient manner. But this is a challenge that we have to recognize. Those resources also have role responsibilities. So there is a community conversation to talk about what is it that we most need to be focusing on and recognizing, because everyone had a role responsibility, whether it is, as you see, the drugs have a nexus in regards to violence in our community. There's issues in regards to, again, like I said, the gun violence. Some of these particular patrol strategies had directives to deal with that. So we really got to be very intentional, understanding what that lift looks like, and continue to have community conversations, not only with our residents, but the elected officials who have to deal with being part of that conversation. But also, I say this, it does give us an opportunity to look at what other partnerships that we can have out there. Looking at from the standpoint of, like it was mentioned, but Ian talked about, we have online reporting, expanding that, making it more robust so you can free up officers' time. So this is not a report that we're kind of saying what we're not going to do, is looking for the opportunities and seeing how to best, put that forth.
Question over here.
Thanks. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for your service, and all the men in blue for your service, and congratulations for your decades of service to the city of Milwaukee. Looking at the data slides, is there another data slide obviously showing Milwaukee is one of the, as far as percentage, one of the lower as far as civilianization? Is there another data slide that shows the inverse or direct relationship with cities, peer cities that have higher civilian rates, so showing the effectiveness of crime going down as a result of this? Are there any type of things that we can look at to see how effective this is? And then last but not least, as a product of 53206 in the Sherman Park area, what happened to the baseball cards? I mean, what can we do about bringing the baseball cards back? So, tough question, the easy question for you.
Dr. Milwaukee Brewers. So, looking at the report, I know that they looked at what other cities have, conversely, in regards to what the civilianization. My team can look at what is the savings or the abilities of the benefits of having a more robust. I know there's probably a little more nimbleness of moving resources around. I mean, it is a challenge sometimes when you want to redeploy. You have to make sure that you're crossing all your T's and dotting your I's when you're dealing with sworn officers. I will say this, and it's not trying to put a wet blanket on anything, but our major cities across the country are hurting. It's not rosy and posy in any city right now in regards to the challenges that we're dealing with, not only from a standpoint of attrition, but also recruitment. There is almost a cannibalism going on across the country in regards to all type of resources, sworn and non-sworn. So there is an opportunity that I look at from being a force multiplier. Looking at other particular entities, we have great working partnerships within the law enforcement community, within the business community, because the challenges are real in regards to having retention. There's other departments out there that has recruitment bonuses of $25,000, major cities, where they're taken away from other cities. There's issues in regards to this, like, we talk about non-sworn, which I always say there is no difference between the importance of my sworn and non-sworn in my department or our department. But the reality is, in regards to our non-sworn, which captures our crime analysts, private sector is taking them. I love you, Northwestern Mutual Life, wherever you are in here, but it's hard when you're trying to deal with those difficulties in regards to the type of pay, and the type of environment. So we're working hard and working with the city to give steps for our crime analysts, give them things that would enhance their relationship of being within the department. But there are great benefits having more civilians, especially when it comes to the financial aspect. But it's not an easy transition. And to be very honest, looking at it from a standpoint, this administration is probably the first to embrace this particular activity that's long overdue. And so it's not being pushed back on, but there is still a lot of other people that get on board in regards to what we're trying to do. And the more that we have these discussions, the more that we share in regards to what these challenges are, and that we are looking for whatever guidance, help, support, that will be definitely appreciated.
One more over here.
Hi, Chief Norman. This might actually be a question starting with Matrix. Chief Flynn was here over a decade ago, and he said that he needed IT help. So I got it in there. It was the first time we civilianized the director of IT role. It had always been a sworn position. And watching that journey was fascinating because of culture, right? Director of IT was easy. Nobody internally really wanted that job. But once you get in that job, there is this command and control and sworn hierarchy, and then there's everybody else. And finding the ability to have the responsibility and empowerment to move the needle when you're non-sworn is a real challenge. So, for Matrix, have you seen any best practices around the nation that really address how to make that culture change? And then for you, Chief Norman, what does the rest of the community have to do to support you with that culture change? Because if you don't have the culture change, the non-sworn are, second-class citizens.
Absolutely. Don't know if we want to go first, Ian, or since I'm on the mic.
Yeah, it certainly starts, with leadership, initiating that organizational cultural change and, reinforcing that with training and ensuring that, as these civilianized functions, that's an important piece of the implementation process that's kind of deliberately planned out, and, steps are planned as far as how are we going to avoid those kinds of problems. But
so the big thing is to model what you expect as a leader. As we embrace more civilianizing, especially when we talk about our managers, one of the things that was instituted under this administration was leadership retreats. And normally in the past, leadership retreats would be sworn. By bringing in our non-sworn partners and ensuring that you set the tone. We've had a number of retreats over the course of the little time that I've been here, and sharing the same philosophies, the same guidelines, the same books that we read, and expect those who are in this management to embrace and to work collectively and cooperatively. It takes from the standpoint of the head, but also those who share that particular space, our assistant chiefs. I've made it very known, I said it, and I said it publicly right now in regards to there's no difference. We're all members of Milwaukee Police Department. And the expectation to model that at your level to your people and to show that respect, that type of embracing that, you're not a second-class citizen, that you are important, that I see you. Whether we have, again, award ceremonies, they're all part of the team. We had a unit award for one of our special investigation team, specialty unit that dealt with violence and drugs, whatnot. Going to crime analyst Keisha Harper. Part of that celebration was saying that yes, we got some officers out there who are doing noble work, God's work, but it can't be done without our partners here who are making sure that we got all our T's crossed and I's dotted. What are we targeting? Are we targeting the right areas? So it's really, a good friend that gave me a book called Culture Trumps Everything. I read that book. And I understand that, again, the change in what's going on with MPD is not a speedboat. It's a cruise ship, and anybody who's been on a cruise ship, it doesn't turn quite quickly as you want it to, but it turns. And the proof is in the pudding in regards to our numbers. Now, what the proper context of how we are working so much as a team, because the challenges are real. The attrition is real. The recruitment from a department of our size by the small departments is real in regards to taking away officers to the suburbs. But beyond even having, again, single to double digits reduction in these large categories, we still have the collective settlement agreement. And we're over 90% in compliance as we are accomplishing the lift of public safety. And what anyone knows in regards to the settlement agreement, it has a lot of different rules of engagement, understanding that we need to be a better and more engaged department. Coming into this particular role, we had like 20% compliance. And so that had a lot of the struggles of making sure that you had the proper leadership, but also those who are doing a lift, embracing this work in conjunction with making sure that you're responding to public safety, in conjunction with that you're engaging your community, because that's a big part of my vision in regards to what type of department. And when I say engagement, I'm not just talking about balloons and ice cream cones. I'm talking about this. This is engagement. This is feedback. This is where we're learning in regards to what you expect out of us, and that we are a service. We might not fix your plumbing or give you a hamburger, but we're responsive to what you want out of your department. And it's up to us in leadership to ensure that happens. So I know that's a long response to a short question there, but I am proud of the team. We talk like that every day. Team, what we're doing, team, because we're all part of the same team. One effort.
I didn't know it was my turn. Thank you. Appreciate it. I know where you was going. But no, Chief, thank you a lot. I appreciate the service. I think it's been echoed. We understand the challenges that come along with your profession, so thank you. Tina kind of led into one of my questions related to technology, surveillance, and so forth, infrastructure. So the question really is, as we kind of, launch into the next, way of living with technology being the center point or influencing a lot of what we do as leaders in our businesses and the organizations and so forth, what does that look like for you all in the next phase of community policing in terms of technology being an influencing factor? And I say that to say that this is a room full of folks with big pockets. And you mentioned the foundation. Is there something that we can be kind of investigating on our side collectively that would allow us to help fund some of those technological influences as we kind of advance the ball towards better outcomes?
So for, clarity, I didn't plant them in the crowd there to do this for me, so, But I will say that there's a lot of different platforms. One of the things that is hard for us to really have as a statistical or, a evidence base is what does that engagement look like? And there's platforms out there that provide that particular type of feedback. A lot of things that we talk about, especially from the leadership, is anecdotal, meaning that this is what I heard here, this is what I got back from this meeting. But there's nothing that is truly a platform that, and I know there's technology out there, that actually grabs that feedback in real time from your community. So wherever that can help in regards to understanding, your own levers to pull for those particular type of technological services, or, we open up our pockets or put our hat out and you pop, a couple of dollars in there for us to be able to purchase this. I don't care how we get it done, let's just get it done. So there's things out there that helps us in regards to having that robust real-time engagement. That, the online system helps in regards to having that more accessibility with our community. So technology is the new wave of the future in regards to being a force multiplier. Being a smarter department, being a more responsive department, and also being able to have real-time reporting out. But we also got to remember, with the platforms, with the systems, you need people. IT is another hard one. We just had to ask for, Department of Employee Relations to help, how do we retain those who are able to navigate? Because you don't want a cop just to get in there and kind of start, tapping on the keyboard. You want someone who's been trained and has the ability to navigate, to talk that language, but also to retain. Because as much as we, build up, they take it out. And so those are challenges also in regards to how to navigate some of these, real-time issues of, yes, we want to civilianize, we want to make sure that we are being as efficient, but, it's hard trying to compete with the private sector, especially that there are challenges within your respective organizations of retaining, and we just heard about some of the recruiting here efforts that needs to take place. And the police department, just city government in itself is no stranger or not out of the crosshairs being affected by that. So there's a lot of great opportunities, and I know that between the foundation, working with our elected officials, I just said let's have the conversation. My team is responsive. My interim, my interim chief of staff, Heather Huff, is here. That's a resource to talk and start the conversation, see where it leads. But believe me, you want to help, we have a way to get it done. We're not going to sit there, slap your hand away.
Happy New Year, Chief.
Happy New Year, ma'am.
Quick question. From time to time, there are reports about inequities when it comes to traffic stops. Where are we in addressing that issue, and how real is it?
So that's a constant challenge in regards to what we're seeing from a raw data of those who are being stopped. That is a situation that we're consistently, looking at the data. We monitor it consistently. The work we put into ensuring that there is understanding of implicit bias. We just got training of unconscious bias by soon to be, I think he's not a judge anymore, but Judge Mosley. I'm working with, again, doing the racial equity inclusion work of having conversations and, putting together, programming to, recruit a diverse body. We have embraced it, 30 by 30, having 30% female employees by 2030. But the challenge is real. We're working through a lot of things that, we have to, dig down and say, okay, is this what we consider to be explicit bias or implicit bias? Explicit being you're outwardly using, wrong behavior and, and doing it intentionally, or is it subconsciously? So I will say that we're always monitoring. I know that we have, again, as I mentioned, a college settlement agreement. We're consistently monitoring in regards to behaviors and ensuring that there is accountability, because that's all part of, changing culture. That those who are not willing to have that buy-in to be on board, you will be held accountable. And I'm not afraid of that. I've said that and I've done it many times in regards to what accountability looks like. But we are moving in the right direction, Dr. Hall, but we're not there yet. I will say that for a number of years that we have been under the councilman agreement, we have in our traffic stops been over 90% compliant in regards to the documentation. But there's something still there in regards to that. We do see that there are still disparities in regards to our stops that we're working with, the community groups. We are definitely having a conversation with the ACLU to ensure that, we're going to do the best that we can to address it and, put it in the right direction. So I will say this, and I've said it publicly, I don't tolerate any particular type of behavior that discriminates or to use the wrong reasonings for, engaging, communities of all nature to impact public safety. That's not how you get it done. You do it in a procedural justice way, a fair and impartial way. You do it in a professional way.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for your time today. I'll ask the last two questions. I got two, so but I'll set you up for a good way out. Okay. I want to be remembered as a good host. The more challenging question first is, and I think it's a question for Ian as well, it sounds to me like when I listened to what the study did, it was sort of a demand-based study. You looked at what the demand on our system is and said, okay, here's what you need to satisfy that demand. Is that a fair assumption of what happened? Okay. So my question then is, if we did everything you said and met somewhere in the middle of what civilization should be, where would that put our expenditure? And I don't know how it gets measured. Is it the cost of public safety on a per capita basis? I don't know whatever that is on a pure city basis. But how do we know, are we putting excess demand? And are there other reasons why then there's excess demand? It leads us to ask a lot of questions. And so I first want to know, where does that sit? So that's my first question. And the second question then, which is you should end with, which is, okay, so you've talked about the positive trends we're seeing. Can you tell us what you're doing that's causing this? 'Cause there must be you're seeing some results. So we'll leave those two questions. Thank you.
Okay. You start first, and me start first.
Here, do you want this? Oh, yeah. If I'm understanding the first question, I think that what you'll find is that, as you implement services like online reporting, civilian response, where people know that they can get a call answered more quickly, like let's say, for example, someone's bike is stolen, and right now maybe they won't even file that report because they don't have 2-3 hours to wait for an officer to respond, take the report, they have other things to do. But if it's a quick online report that takes 5 minutes to complete, they'll do it. So I think that there's a lot of demand out there that you're not getting under the current arrangement that you'll get as you start to civilianize. But certainly civilization is a spectrum of different options, and the cost of implementing the recommendations changes depending on where you fall within that. Granted, even adding civilians takes significant resources.
Well, every year going through a budget process, I'm always questioned in regards to using the taxpayer dollars in an efficient, effective manner. And I will say that you quantify it by, are you still getting a certain level of service, or even better, by the investment that you put in? With those cuts, are we still seeing a robust response from your respective department? I know that I'm never ever purport to be a budget guy, but are you getting your biggest bang for your buck? As we are making these investments into your officers, do you see a comparable reduction in the issues that we all are complaining about, whether it's reckless driving or seeing a impact in the violence? And so I will say that it's really up to the budget wonks in regards to kind of put it per capita and whatnot, but as we reduce or change or replace, does it affect your services? Are you still receiving that responsiveness? Are you still seeing that type of engagement? Are you still seeing that public appearance of having officers around? Are we, just taking away from Peter to pay Paul, and you're not getting any particular impact in regards to, those numbers that we talk about? That is all the type of, questioning the effectiveness of your departments across the nation. UCR is a uniform crime report that is utilized for major departments. I mean, they're going over to NIBRS, which is National Incident Bureau Reporting System, but these are things that are measurements in regards to that. Are you truly making that impact? I will hope so, that when you are putting forth those efforts, you're seeing those reductions. Say, for instance, we talk about in regards to it's reactive, but having more detectives to investigate violent crime. Bringing someone who can be held accountable from investigations. You don't have enough sworn officers to do that. It will have a converse impact in regards to those who are recommitting crime and doing more harm in the community. I will never say that all the investments to public safety is going to be the all-encompassing panacea is answered. But I will say that it is important to make sure that there is proper support, and also that you challenge your leaders to be innovative and imaginative and report out in regards to this is what your money is being utilized, and this is how it shows the level of effectiveness that you're getting for that. And so our particular challenges is important for us to reorganize, to look at opportunities. But the true benefit is, do you have a city that is responsive to more business, more investment in residential living? When you have a safe city, all these things are affected by that particular type of investment, because people want to have a safe city to have tourism. People want to have a safe city to go see the movies or stay over at a hotel. And so it is not, like I said, my cup of tea to try to put it in a per capita quota, but I do understand that there is responsibility to be efficient, but also to be innovative and show you what your investment dollars are getting out of for that particular type of investment. In regards to what we're seeing for the type of quantifiable numbers of double digits, I would say, first of all, having a collaborative approach is that's a new strategy. Some of the things that was talked about in regards, I'm born and raised. I went to UW Milwaukee and Marquette Law and have my master's. I know all those strategies out there. You can talk about corporate principle, focused deterrence. The new game changer is working together. That's the new game changer. Police departments were silos. You had a problem, we just take care of it. Don't ask how we did it, we just get it done. With the transparency that we have, with the type of expectations of being a responsive, again, fair and impartial policing, we have people who are saying, I want to help, and we're giving you something to do. We're not going to just sit there and just say, help us. Whether it's, a safe place initiative for the businesses, whether it's, we just met with the Milwaukee Bucks talking about, how do we put out our firearm problem, using your platform to get a bigger base of, you're bringing guns down to our city that are taking our cars. And these young ones are stealing these cars, are being armed. We have to work together to really have that type of impact that's not only measurable, but sustainable. And if we're not working together with the community-based people, with the business, with our other law enforcement, we will fail. So when I look at from the standpoint of the things that we've really have been able to capitalize, we have called the Violence Response for Public Health and Safety Teams, which is a collaboration with Department of Human Health Services, MFD, working with DA's office. Having that common conversation and saying we're going to utilize our subject matter expertise together is a game changer. Public safety review, we do it weekly with our partners. We're going after those who are trying to buy guns illegally. We get the information from the FBI, they're going over to the Dunhams, they're going over to Cabela's. These are individuals who should not have a gun, and they're still trying to buy them. And we're finding these individuals and we're holding them accountable. But that's through partnerships. So if I want to say anything that's really truly working besides the great work of the men and women of the Milwaukee Police Department, who day in, day out, 365 days a year, 7 days a week, holidays included, work hard to keep this community of ours safe, it's our partnerships. It's really the game changer in this day and age. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for spending time with us today, and thank you to George Stanley and to Ian Brady and to the Chief, and to the mayor for being here. And we just want to thank you to everybody who financially supported this study. I think we can't think of, as I talked about in the email I sent out, there's really two more, these are two of the most important things we've got going on right now in terms of understanding the fiscal impacts on our city and living within our fiscal bounds and trying to extend our bounds, but making sure that we are doing things as efficiently and delivering as efficiently as we can, or addressing root cause issues. I mean, even talk about in terms of, and then also the crime issue in our city. We know that's, and it's good to hear with the stories you're talking about, because perception becomes reality. I hate to stand up here and say I'm old enough to remember, but I'm old enough to remember 30 years ago, downtown was viewed as not a safe place to be, and not necessarily because it was true. It was just viewed that way, and it was about having a 24-hour population. Okay, we've got a lot more of that 24-hour population now. That should be working in our favor, and it's making sure that perception does not, that perception gets corrected and is lined up, that it is a safe place to be. But we know we have issues, and we know we've had a couple years of just, people are nuts. I mean, being locked up in your house, locked up is the wrong word, I guess, with the police chief here, but being in your house and being isolated, as we've been as a society for 2 years, is a recipe for a mess. And I've gotten up here and talked about the importance of being back at work and being in offices just to mitigate that. And so I do believe our police force has the challenge on their hands. But the good news is, again, things are in cycles, and we're cycling out of it, and people are getting back together again. And think about all the holidays. Everyone's together with family. I think a lot of people got together over Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's with people they hadn't seen in years. That's a positive trend that's going to benefit us.